All right, we're back. Second and medium college football podcast on the horn today. Josh Newberg, 247 Sports. You know all about him. He needs no introduction. Josh, let's jump right into it. A lot of college football going around. Some really good matchups that we saw. However, it seems like the AAC is becoming very popular, and the teams in that division are getting a lot of publicity. Houston, who just fell not too long ago, USF doing well, UCF doing well. However, the American Conference as a whole, would you say it is growing in popularity?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think they're having a good showing. Houston kind of set the tone by beating Florida State last year. I think that put all eyes on the conference heading into this season, and then they go out and they beat Oklahoma. So you got Houston has been doing a great job, and now USF. So USF kind of benefited a little bit from Houston laying the groundwork, but here they sit undefeated and control their own destiny. So yeah, I think the Americans getting a little bit more attention this year.
You've got Houston still on the top in the West. USF on the top in the East. However, we know there's plenty of conference games left to play. What is your outlook right now on the American League championship game in December?
I think it's looking fun. I think USF is kind of, like you said, they got a long way to go still. A lot of games to be played, but you can't ask for anything more than being able to control your own destiny. And right now, it looks as if USF is probably the front runner to host the conference championship game now that Houston's out of the way, I shouldn't say out of the way, but now that they lost. And that's all you can ask. You got to take it one game at a time. They got to continue to get better on defense. I think there's still some deficiencies. This team isn't perfect by any means, but I don't think any team really in the American is perfect. So I think that they got to, they got to keep playing ball and keep doing what they do, which is score points.
I have not seen Navy this year. Just been reading up on their progress. Do you think Navy can definitely pose a threat? They're sitting at 4-1 right now overall, 3-0 in the conference. What kind of threat do you think Navy can pose over in the West?
Well, yeah, I think you got Navy. They're a very talented running football team. They got a bunch of running backs, including the one that they have playing at the quarterback position.
Right.
And they're going to pound it. They're going to stay disciplined. It's going to be a tough matchup. You just got to think that USF can outscore them.
Right now, on the west side of the conference, Navy's at 4-1, 3-0 overall. Memphis doing a lot better than folks expected, especially losing their big NFL prospect quarterback. They're sitting at 4-1 overall, 1-0 in the conference. And then Tulsa, surprisingly, 4-1, 1-0 in the conference. Then we bounce over to the east side. South Florida at top, they're 2-0 in the conference, 5-0, 5-1 overall. UCF 1-0 in the conference, 3-2 overall. And then Temple at 3-3 overall, 1-1 in the conference. So just a lot of ball to be a lot left to play.
Yeah, still very young, but
yes,
you got to like USF's odds in their conference. You look at it on paper, and you can almost pencil in wins against those teams that they still have remaining. They're not guaranteed, and USF's going to have to play well to get them, but you got to love where USF sits right now.
You definitely do, man. Quentin Flowers is sitting second, and the quarterback rating in the conference also at third in rushing. As a matter of fact, Quentin Flowers is third in rushing, Marlon Mack right behind him in the conference. So USF doing really well. UCF, Shaquem Griffin right here from Lakewood High School is second in the conference in sacks. So you got a lot of local guys doing some real good things. Nigel Harris at USF, he's fourth in the league in interception yards, got 2 picks on the season. So South Florida and UCF doing some really good things. What's just off the rip? I just thought of this real quick. What about UCF? They had some tough losses, most notably to Michigan. However, they did show flashes against those bigger teams. How do you like the Knights?
I think UCF's an improved football team. We've seen flashes from the offense, but we've also seen flashes, that make them look lost as could be. But that's what you expect when they've gotten a whole new system. Like, they didn't just renovate their house. They demolished it and are rebuilding it. And that's kind of risky sometimes, but you can see they do have some pieces. The depth isn't there yet. Hey, USF went through everything that UCF is going through right now with Willie Taggart, and having him have to come in and build it up with 2 or 3 recruiting classes. And there was some doubt along the way, and there was some people that had his back throughout the whole thing. And I think Scott Frost at UCF is going to experience a similar ride to what Willie Taggart did. I do think he has a recipe for success. You and I both agree that type of offense is something that could thrive within the state of Florida. Willie Taggart's done it quickly in 1 year. He's got his offense playing a lot better. So I think UCF is having a good year, all things told. And I don't think UCF season should be defined on whether or not they beat USF this year. I think that they are clearly headed in a better direction than they were, say, well, obviously a year ago at this time because they didn't have any wins. But, under George O'Leary for the past couple years, it hasn't looked like it's trending in the right way, and now it finally does.
South Florida will host UConn this week. Then they're at Temple. And then a big game against Navy, who we just said are doing very well in the conference. And then they're at Memphis, who is doing very well in the conference. SMU, we should pencil in a win, I would think. And then the big game against UCF. So the bottom 4 to 5 games for South Florida is definitely difficult, yet doable. Let's stay with South Florida here, Josh. Who's been the most impressive players to you thus far?
I've been impressed with Quentin Flowers and Mac and Marlon Mack just as much as anybody has. But the guys that kind of stand out to me that maybe doesn't get the credit they deserve, Dearness Johnson.
Yep.
Dearness Johnson has come in quietly, filled in when Mac goes out with injury. He's been dinged up a little bit this year, and he's come in and he's done a great job at not only running back, but he catches the ball wonderfully out of the backfield. He's on punt return. He's on kick return. He's stayed healthy. He's been available every time they need him. Darius Tice goes down. He's a senior running back, and Dearness Johnson hasn't skipped a beat behind Marlon Mack. So I think Dearness Johnson's done a great job. I think Nigel Harris on defense, Augie Sanchez. These 2 guys on defense are making a whole heck of a lot of plays, and they don't have a lot of playmakers on defense. They got some decent players, but they don't have a whole lot of playmakers. And I think Augie and Nigel have kind of been difference makers on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I definitely like Dearness Johnson. He scored 3 different ways already this year. He's got 4 rush touchdowns, 4 receiving touchdowns, 1 return touchdown. He's been an absolute blessing in disguise for South Florida, especially when Mac went down.
Yeah, and I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Not at all.
Just because Mac gets it all.
And
he deserves it.
I'll tell you a guy who I've grown to like a lot. It's Dietrich Nichols, the corner. 5'10", 189 pounds from Miami, Florida. I think if you had to label their better cover corner, I think Dietrich would be their guy. Watching him throughout the year, he's impressed me with his hips and his feet and his transition, his aggressiveness. I love his attitude and mindset. He seems like a really, really good player. And then Mitchell Wilcox, man. He doesn't get a lot of balls thrown his way, but he provides quality blocking on the edge, allows Willie Taggart to do more things offensively. So I definitely like what Mitchell Wilcox has provided South Florida tight end position.
Yeah, I agree with Mitchell. I think USF has signed bigger, higher ranked tight ends than Mitchell Wilcox, but I can't name a tight end over the last 4 or 5 years that's played better than Mitchell Wilcox has. With all the price that Sean Price had and all the physical attributes that Elkino Dillon has, I haven't seen it. We didn't see anything from Sean Price to live up to the hype of him being an Under Armour All-American. And in the short time that Mitchell Wilcox has been on the field, he's contributed quite a bit to this USF team.
All right, let's bounce over to the ACC, which you know a lot about. Florida State's over in that conference, and you covered them extensively. I'm one to think that it could get interesting unless Clemson go ahead and runs the table. However, I think Florida State's win over Miami was huge in a big sense. Let's just say Florida State upsets Clemson in a few weeks. What do you think? How do you think the ACC turns on its head if that happens?
Well, I think right now the thing that I'm watching the ACC is, can Miami represent the Coastal? And a big question will be answered this week when Miami plays UNC. For years, if you look at Miami's record over the last 5 or 6 years, their record after losing to Florida State is something ridiculous. I mean, they usually end up suffering another 2 or 3 losses. But is this a different Miami team? If it is a different Miami team, you're going to see them take care of UNC, which they should do, which FSU should have done. But can they? And that's the big debate. So I want to see Miami represent the Coastal this year and play for an ACC championship, because we've heard a lot about them, and whether or not they're back, they still got to beat UNC, and they got to take care of Virginia Tech, who's sitting at the top right now with 2-0 record. But as far as Florida State getting back into it, they're 1-2 in conference. Clemson's 3-0. I really don't see Florida State being able to get back into the conference championship game. I think there's a lot of games to be left to play, but you got Louisville sitting at 2-1, and they've beaten FSU, and then you got Clemson at 3-0, and they still have FSU to go. I have a hard time seeing a 1-2 FSU 1-2 in conference Florida State team competing for the ACC championship this year. I don't see it happening.
Clemson sitting pretty, as you said, 3-0 in the conference. Louisville's only loss in the conference to Clemson. North Carolina, one loss down at the Coastal. They're 2-1 in the conference. Virginia Tech, who not a lot of people are talking about, they're sitting 2-0 in the conference, 4-1 overall. Defensively,
but they still have Miami left to play, so that'll that
correct.
Could end up.
Still have Miami left to play, and their defense has only given up 78 points on the year. That's second best, only to Miami and the Coastal. FSU,
yeah,
Miami.
They've been a big surprise, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And what's crazy is, not too long ago, the Mike Vick days and even years post Mike Vick, that Virginia Tech Bud Foster defense was what everybody looked forward to. That's what everybody wanted their they were the Alabama defense of that time. Even though it was different.
and then they weren't that good for a while afterward, and they still got the title just because they earned that reputation. But yeah, they're several years removed from actually having a dominant defense. But here they are, just 1 year under the Fuente era, and things are looking good.
And I'm just looking at numbers right now. They've only of their 2 conference games, they've only given up 3 points in their 2 conference games. Pretty impressive. Yeah. Now, about this, now you touched on Florida State, Miami. Miami was basically simply put, Josh, they were balling before they ran into Florida State, and Florida State before they played Miami looked like a shell of themselves. Did the rivalry spark that out of Florida State, and how did Miami lay an egg the way they did against the Noles?
All right, I think the rivalry definitely sparked a few things, because you don't just turn it on like that. But I also think that the opponent played into Florida State's strengths, especially on defense. The offense didn't score as much as we thought, and the defense gave up way less than we thought it would. But I think it was kind of a perfect storm for Florida State. They were playing with some pride because they hadn't put up a good performance pretty much all season on defense. And then you get Brad Kaya, who's slightly more mobile than a telephone pole. And, that's kind of what Florida State likes. They want their quarterback to sit back there and they can just pin their ears back and take shots at him, which they did. And Miami ran the ball. Miami ran the ball on first and second down way more than I expected. After seeing what teams have done to Florida State through the air, heck, we saw it firsthand here in Tampa when Quentin Flowers just unloaded on a 75-yard touchdown on the first play. Miami didn't take enough shots downfield. I don't know what they've seen on tape to think that Florida State could cover their wide receivers and to play conservatively running the football on first and second down.
Right.
I don't know why they didn't test them.
Right. That was my concern also when we saw Florida State live against USF is how come you're not testing these Florida State DBs and they've been getting roasted all year, and now Miami with at least we could say as talented or more talented wide receiver group that we've seen this year that Florida State has played, they didn't test those DBs either. And we love Derwin James. We love Derwin James and love his ability, what he can do. But Derwin James is one man and can take up maybe a half a field at most. On the field, you still have 3 to 4 other defensive backs that you can rattle off passes against, and they just did not attempt to do that, even as talented as Mark Walson and Joe Yearby are.
Yeah, it was kind of mystifying. I really don't understand it. They threw the ball deep a couple times, but it was all from the 35 going in. You know, they hit Stacy Coley on the third down and long touchdown. But I'm talking about why don't they open it up when right off the touchback? You know, go for the 75-yard strike right there, because all season I've watched a lot of Florida State DBs running and chasing. I haven't seen a whole lot of covering. And on Saturday night with the routes, they were running a lot of short and underneath and intermediary. And you saw Florida State DBs and hit pockets of these guys. They weren't running and chasing, but also Miami wasn't really forcing them into those situations, I didn't think.
Right, I have to agree with you. They didn't force the issue. They didn't force the issue at
So
all.
back to your original question, is this spark something in Florida State? They got the win. It's a big rivalry win. It'll have implications in recruiting. But I'm just not ready to say that, that was it. The switch was flipped and we're going to see the Florida State that we expected to all year. I'm not to that point yet.
Well, I'm not at that point yet either. I'll tell you a few observations and a few things that have changed about me. I've always loved Dalvin Cook, but I think Dalvin Cook has gained even more respect this season because they've been limited offensively. Redshirt freshman quarterback, still learning how to play quarterback at a big-time level. But Dalvin Cook taking the brunt of the offense on his shoulder. I've gained more respect to how he's carried the load, the attempts that he's had, the health that he's kept so far, and even handling some of his injuries. But I really like Dalvin Cook. And tell me this. You would know more about this. I was getting ready to mention young man's name, but now I have a question to ask you. How come Jacquez Patrick does not get more carries to relieve some of the pressure from Dalvin Cook?
Because Jimbo is going with the hot hand. I think Jimbo and Dalvin are on the same page. Dalvin is the ultimate competitor.
Okay.
And he doesn't want to be taken out of the game.
Okay.
Plays a lot on rhythm and having the hot hand. And right now, it's not like they're stopping Dalvin. They have been spelling him a little bit with Jacquez. Like, there was occasions where you saw if there was 4 or 5 consecutive runs, Patrick twice. But I think for the most part, it has to do with the continuity of having a freshman leading the offense and Dalvin Cook kind of being there as a safety valve. He knows who to block. I wouldn't underestimate that. In Jimbo Fisher's offense, we all know he's a QB guru, and the QB is his position. If you get in there, and I'm not saying Jacquez Patrick can't block, but if you get in there and you don't know your assignment when it comes to blocking, and you're not going to be where they need you to be, that will keep you off the field more than anything at Florida State is a running back, not knowing how to block or where to block on passing down. So I think that's a lot of the reason why we see Cook, and Cook's also a better pass catcher as well. So I think we're seeing more of him. This is going to be the last year for Cook, and then the reins will be handed over to Jacquez Patrick next season.
Note to all young running backs, as you heard Josh Newberg state, know who to block. You have to be able to block in the pocket and also catch the ball out the backfield. If you can become a triple threat running back, run, block, and catch, your value increases at the position. Let's jump over to the pack.
And look no further than Dalvin Cook's freshman year. Dalvin Cook really didn't get going until his 4th or 5th game. If you look at the carries per game and how much he played, and I will be willing to bet my next paycheck on it, that the only thing that kept him off the field for those first 5 games was his ability to block on passing downs.
You got to want to. Blocking, and tackling are one and the same. You have to want to do it. It's an attitude thing.
Yep.
Let's bounce over to the West Coast. Washington sitting right outside the top four. The Pac-12 does not seem to be as strong as we thought it would be. Washington at 6-0 overall, 3-0 in the conference. Arizona at 5-1, Utah at 5-1. However, the better teams we thought would be the better teams in the Pac-12, Oregon, Cal, Stanford. Those teams right there just barely above 500 or barely below 500. How much credit do you give the Pac-12 schedule and those teams over in it?
Well, the only team I'm giving credit to in the Pac-12 is Washington. I've seen enough of them. I'm buying Washington. I've been asked all weekend. It's crazy. I've had like 4 or 5 friends ask me about Washington. Do I think they're legit? Yes. I've gotten a chance to watch it about 3 of their games this season. I've watched quite a bit of Stanford. USC I've seen a good bit, and I'm telling you, Washington's for real. They play fast. They play physical, but I do think the schedule helps them because I really don't see another program in the Pac-12 that's even close to the level that Washington's at this year.
Washington's quarterback, Jake Brown.
Stanford just doesn't have a quarterback.
Yeah,
and they don't need a great one, but they don't have one at all this year. And McCaffrey can only do so much. People are game planning. They've gotten used to the schemes that Stanford runs, and he's still going to get his. But that just shows you how, I don't want to say bad Stanford is this year, but they just don't have it. They don't have it all going like they have it over the last 4 or 5 years that we've been kind of accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, you mentioned quarterback from those other teams, and Washington does have one. This guy, Jake Browning, has been balling, man. He's almost at 75% completion rating, 1,418 yards on the season, 23 TDs, Josh, to only 2 interceptions. He's sitting at a 205 quarterback rating right now. They've got 3 running backs.
And they got a good one. I remember watching him at the opening. I mean, this was a kid. This wasn't just some kid that popped up on Washington's roster. I mean, he was a pretty good high school prospect coming out. So he's lived up to the hype, and they've got a defense around him this year. And I wouldn't be surprised. You know, we see kind of these West Coast teams flash a year or two. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Washington stick around for a little bit, especially with USC being down, with Stanford going to lose McCaffrey. Washington could have some staying power.
They've got 3 running backs with over 40 carries. Each one of those are averaging over 5 yards a carry. Lavelle Coleman's averaging 9 yards a carry, my man, with 44 carries on the season. They've got 4 wide receivers with double-digit receptions. John Ross has got 30 of them. He's averaging 12 yards a catch. Dante Pettis is averaging 15 yards a catch. Man, these guys are killing. I am buying Washington right now. I've seen them play once, and I think that offense complements their defense. And the one thing that scares me about fast-paced offenses is that if they don't have a defense that can get off in two possessions, preferably a 3 and out, that they're just going to tire down their defense. And a fast-paced offense a lot of times has a defense that gives up a lot of points. That's not the case with Washington. Their fast-paced offense and their defense is getting off the field in 6 to 7 snaps. So I'm buying Washington right now.
You just described Oregon in the team that Washington is not. That is the team that Oregon is this year.
Exactly, man. They're getting worn down, getting wore out. The offense is sexy. However, it's not producing like it should, and it's their biggest enemy. Their greatest strength is right now their biggest enemy for Oregon. Any last comments, man? We hit on a lot. Josh Newberg, we're talking to right now. Any last comments? Anything across the college football landscape?
Oh man, well,
you got a Heisman.
We're at a point. I think we're at a point in the season where I feel like every time we've been on, we say we're going to know a lot about these teams after X week or Y week, and right now I think we're sitting in a place where we kind of know what everybody's about. When it comes to USF, I still think that they have deficiencies on defense that are not going to be corrected this year. I think that they're not going to find a pass rusher. We said all season they got to rush the passer better so the secondary plays better. Well, guess what? They don't have a dominant pass rusher on defense. They're going to have to score points this year. That's just the way USF's going to have to win.
Right.
With Florida State, we've seen put out a big enough to win the games that they should win, but I don't think they have a defense that can hang with Clemson. Miami, we've yet to see Brad Kaya have a signature win. We haven't seen it. In 5 games in DeAndre Francois' career, he's beaten more ranked opponents than Brad Kaya has in his entire career at Miami.
Wow.
At Florida, there's big question marks on offense, but this defense can carry, and they have a couple playmakers in Antonio Callaway that will probably win them some SEC games. I hope they play LSU. I thought they were going to beat LSU at home, so I hope that game gets played because that would be a quality win for UF, and they need that right now. See if it comes around and how the time hurts them because it looked like Fournette was a game. So I think we know about these teams. I don't see a championship caliber team in the state of Florida outside of maybe USF winning their conference. But overall, I think we're seeing all of these programs heading in the right direction.
That's Josh Newberg. I'm Preston Jackson. Thank you for joining us on Second and Medium, our college football podcast. We'll be back next week. We're going to bring Josh back on as much as possible. Thank you. God bless you. Good night.